Hello and welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Janai and this is Karmic Fixer Tarot. And I'm going to limit my on-camera time because I don't feel completely camera ready, but I did want to do another tarot spread tutorial. This probably isn't going to be a very long video. I'm trying to keep them short, but I would like to just kind of share the 3-card spread that I use. Now, if you're new to tarot, I had this question once when I was giving a tarot reading. How do you know how to, I guess, put the narrative together? How do you know how to essentially do a reading? Um, how can you tell what answer the cards are giving you? And the simplest way to do that, especially if you're learning tarot, I think, is landing on a few spreads that you like to do. It doesn't necessarily have to be one of the bigger more detailed spreads like a Celtic Cross or even the 9-card Oracle spread from one of my previous videos. And if you haven't seen that, give that a watch if you're looking for new tarot spreads to do. But yeah, I think today I wanted to focus on just a basic 3-card spread. And there's so many different things you can do. You can create your own spread if you have 3 questions, maybe not necessarily 3 questions, but if you have a question that can be broken into maybe 3 facets, 3 parts. I think that's a good way to start giving yourself readings. Of course, there's the 1-card spread for a quick insight. If you'd like maybe a slightly more detailed reading without necessarily having a large spread or a lot of cards to work with, a 3-card spread is a really good one to practice on. So I think I'm going to go ahead and pan down to my table here. And I don't exactly have a question in mind. I was kind of holding off wanting to come up with a good question. But maybe this reading will just be for the sake of demonstration. Now there's one 3-card spread that I like to use, and it came from one of my tarot books, The Guided Tarot. It's a really good beginner book for people who are new to tarot. And by the way, the deck I'm using today is one of my newer decks, the Rosebud Tarot. I have an unboxing video on this beautiful deck, so maybe check that out if this deck appeals to you. It's a really great deck, and I like how some of the cards, not some of the cards, I like how the cards in general are interpreted. There's actually really interesting interpretation of the court cards, which I think gives a lot of clarity to the court cards, which I think will be really helpful if you're new to tarot. So I can't recommend this deck high enough. This is actually one of my new favorite decks. So if you're in the market for a tarot deck, keep in mind, I guess, this deck, the Rosebud Tarot. And in the meantime, I'm just going to shuffle. And one of the spreads that I like to do, if you've seen any of my videos on this channel, it's a simple 3-card spread that I call Advice from the Universe. And that's not necessarily the only 3-card spread you can do. Another very popular 3-card spread is just a simple past, present, future. And, if you want maybe a detailed answer or maybe a spread that's going to give you different perspectives, something to walk through, maybe an understanding of a situation that's been ongoing, or maybe some information on a particular situation you're in, maybe how it's going to evolve or how it has already evolved for you. A past, present, future spread is a very easy one to keep in mind as well. But I really like this Advice from the Universe, so I think I'm going to stop talking for just a moment and see if I can think of a question. And I might speed this up because I'd hate for this portion to be super monotonous. Yeah, my shuffling is pretty basic. Just moving the cards around. Just kind of sloppy here. And one thing that I also do is Again, if you've seen any of my videos, I'll have my basic 3 cards, advice from the universe. But if there are any jumpers, like as I'm shuffling any cards that pop out, I like to keep those in mind too. I like to think of those as, I don't necessarily throw any cards away or disregard any cards. I see that was almost a jumper, but if it turns over or if it falls out, I'll think of it as a jumper. If it doesn't quite turn over all the way, I'll just put it back in the mix. And I also like to read the bottom of the deck, because sometimes that can offer an additional insight, I think, that ties the reading together or adds maybe a nice throughput for the cards. But you don't necessarily have to do that. I didn't start reading the bottom of the deck card until I saw other YouTubers doing it. But yeah, again, I'm still yakking, and I don't know exactly what I'm going to ask. We're going to ask Source. Okay, I actually think I do have a question here. Since this is a tutorial, I might not necessarily go deep into an act. I might not go so deep into, say, interpreting whatever this reading tends to be. That might be a separate video, or I might save that as a write-up. I tend to write up the readings that I do, almost journal style, journal/essay style, when I post those to my Substack. So if any cards come up that you're interested in, intrigued by, or think it might resonate with you, I'll probably have a write-up for this reading on my Substack. Or if this reading feels like maybe it would resonate with others, I might actually post a separate video that's kind of an interpretation of this reading out loud. Okay, so this is a basic reading. All right, I think I've shuffled it enough, and I have a query in mind. I'm going to go ahead and cut. Now, I think there's some tarot readers who are very specific about what hand they use to catch the cards as they're shuffling, what hand they use to move the cards around. And I think it's customary to use your left hand. But I think I'm also at a place where I kind of just do what I feel with tarot. So there are a lot of rules, there are a lot of ideas that people have, people who've been practicing tarot for a long time. There's a lot of conventional wisdom about tarot, which I think is really great. But I also think there's room to be intuitive. Do what feels right to you as you're developing your own practice, particularly if you're very new to tarot. So I've cut the cards and, shuffled. So I'm going to take a moment to reflect on my question again, and I'll go ahead and pull. Okay. So we have first card, second card, and third card. Now, in this particular spread, the advice from the universe spread, which is pretty common for me to use, my first card is the what I need to know. Based on whatever my query is, I like to have my first card as kind of maybe background information, maybe um, something to bear in mind about my current situation. A lot of times, this might be something that I already know deep down, but the cards will be maybe reinforcement of what that is. So, what I need to know is this first card. And the second card tends to be new perspective, maybe a different angle from which to look at the situation, or something that I'm missing about the entire situation, something that maybe is going over my head, or something that, something that's hidden in plain sight, or that sort of thing. So, new perspective is usually the second card. And the third card is an action step, something that I can do, a practical step that I can take in order to maybe get the outcome that I'm looking for, or a practical step in coping with a situation. Maybe it's a situation that's beyond my control, but this will give me some tips on how to, how to cope. So let's go ahead and flip them over. So this is card number one, what I need to know. All right. Yep, mic failure. Sorry about that. So I lost everything that I was saying from here on to the end of the video. So I'm back in voiceover. And yeah, so for the first position, which is the what I should know or what I need to know, we have the Ace of Air or the Ace of Swords, as it is in this deck. And the Ace of Air is a nice card when you're trying to take stock of a situation. I think things to know points me in the direction of seeking clarity. I need to find a way to get clear about any situation I'm going into. Um, this particular reading, um, it's about facing something that I'm having, something I'm a little doubtful about. So that was a nice first card to have, the Ace of Air. Now moving on to our second card, doing a little bit of YouTube censorship here. But the second card, the New Perspective, is the Moon card. The Moon card is a major arcana card that tends to represent illusion or emotion, or it's a call for us to examine our subconscious. It's an opportunity to kind of dig deeper into our intuition, pay attention to what our gut is telling us. If we're experiencing a confusing moment or if we're lacking clarity, sometimes the clarity we need is within. The moon card represents an opportunity for us to maybe get quiet within ourselves, maybe pay attention to what's going on underneath the surface, and to seek clarity. Um, a lot of times, our intuition, when we get really quiet, will tell us what it is we need to know. And sometimes we'll also need to reach outward, reaching out for help, maybe seeking counsel that we trust, maybe getting a different perspective on what it is we need to know. And again, I think that goes right into the new perspective card. Sometimes our intuition will give us a perspective that maybe we've been ignoring or just maybe not honing in on, or that new perspective might come from counsel, maybe a mentor or someone that we trust, who can someone else who can provide us um, with a good perspective. So trust your intuition, and sometimes that intuition will lead you to seek counsel. And I think the moon card is a nice representation of that. And I think at this point I was probably talking about the orientation of the card. Um, Honestly, I can't remember if this card came up in reverse or if I somehow reversed the orientation on my own. And if that's the case, I'm probably explaining how I'm not really a stickler for reversals one way or the other. I just go where my intuition takes me with these cards. So sometimes I'll read the reversal as it might be a good sort of grounding. It might help me to really focus on something that I'm missing, something that's blocking a certain information, a certain aspect of the card that maybe I'm dealing with in excess, or maybe I'm being blocked, or maybe I'm dealing with the shadow side of a specific card. So sometimes, I'll take the I'll take the reversal um, as it feels right to do. Sometimes I'll ignore the reversal. and, like a lot of tarot readers do, we'll just reorient the card and flip it right side up. So that's really kind of up to you. I don't think there's a right way or a wrong way to deal with reversals, just whatever feels right to you. And now I'm moving on to the third card, which is our action step. And we have the generosity of air. Now, in this deck, I really like the way that this deck names the court cards. Now, this is indeed a court card. In fact, it is the Queen of Swords. And the Queen of Swords represents honesty, represents directness, independence. It's a mastery of the mind. And since it's the Queen card, there's a certain receptivity, a certain sort of introspection that comes with this suit. As far as air, as far as intellect, communication, mindset, the Queen court card in this particular suit um, is integrating that mastery of mindset and intellect and communication within herself before directing it outward to others. So she's got a lot of inner clarity, um, represents intellectual independence. It's an embodiment of wisdom, its ability to speak truthfully with compassion and to hold boundaries. And this is a really interesting call to action as far as being able to reason for yourself, not necessarily being easily swayed by the opinions of others, just needing to stand in your own integrity, stand in your own opinion, your own ideas, and to do so in a way that isn't dogmatic, but in a way that's confident, in a way that's reassuring, and just kind of embodying that independence of thought and that clarity that you can bring to any situation that you're going through. Um, so that's just kind of the short and sweet, I guess, of this particular card. And I like how in the Rosebud deck we have generosity and that sort of queenly energy um, in caring for oneself, or rather, in being able to embody, um, the qualities of this card inwardly that helps you to show up for any occasion, helps you to be available, to be of benefit to others. Um, Generally, I think this card represents your inner circle, not necessarily the wider world as much as, say, the King card, um, the King court card. But the Queen can show up in her daily life in all of her wisdom, in all of her clarity, in all of her sound judgment, and be of benefit in her immediate surroundings and can take action accordingly. So I think this is I always like seeing this card. And yeah, embodying the energy of the Queen can lead to, generosity, as the keyword suggests here in this card. So yeah, and I do like the collage style of this particular deck. By the way, we've got the young queen with the crown. A motif in the air suit in this particular card are the garden shears, which I think is really appropriate for air. You know, with the shears in your garden, you're cutting away what's superfluous in order to protect what needs to flourish. Um, a very vital gardening tool, which I think is, I like that interpretation of the air suit, also known as swords in standard tarot. And again, we also have the little fox. Last time this card came up in a reading for me, I was dealing with a neighborhood fox. So I'm now hyper aware of foxes. But the fox in this case can represent um, a cleverness, a craftiness, a resourcefulness that this card represents, an independence, an ability to navigate one's environment um, resourcefully and with their own keen intelligence and observation. So it's a beautiful card. I do love the collage style and just the imagery of this card and all the cards. Again, pretty much all the cards in this particular deck. So, yeah. So we've got our three cards to reiterate. we have the first card as the what I need to know, what you need to know. The second card is new perspective, and the third card is action steps. And that's just kind of an overview. Again, I might do a deeper reading, a deeper write-up rather on my Substack if you're interested in more detail. Yeah, but that's just kind of an overview of this particular deck. Now, before this video closes out, I will probably do a bottom of the deck reading. Now, you don't necessarily have to do that if you're just wanting to deal with a simple 3-card spread, but that's a habit that I've gotten into. Again, a habit that I picked up from other YouTube tarot readers. But I think it can add another layer of clarity or another just kind of throughput in reading. So here we go. Okay, and that's the 3 cards there, the advice from the universe. And finally, we'll go ahead and pull the optional bottom of the deck card. Okay, and what do we have here? We have the 9 of Earth. And as a bottom of the deck card, I think that card will represent an outcome that if you're able to follow the reasoning, or if the initial spread is something that resonates with you, if you're able to put it into perspective and, even put the insights from this reading into action, the bottom of the card can represent an outcome that you might see. And I think this card represents abundance, represents fulfillment. 9 of Earth is the card here, also known as the 9 of Pentacles in Standard Tarot. And so, yeah, this looks like an abundant card. We have the lady in her garden, the beautiful bird. She's got her hat and her stole. And if we look at the nature around her, the plush greenery. And I think, of course, again, hearkening back to the generosity of air, if we take this action step of using our resourcefulness and, bringing a certain clarity to whatever situation we're dealing with, in my case, the outcome could be a fulfilling one. It could be an outcome of abundance, or at least an outcome that's satisfying, an outcome that's less stressful, one that, I'll reap the rewards of the efforts that I put into it. So yeah, so that was just kind of an overview of a simple 3-card spread that I tend to do. If you've seen any of my videos here on YouTube, most of my videos are the advice from the universe spread. It's a very simple one to use, but you can also use any configuration of 3 cards. Maybe assign a different question to each card, or sometimes you don't necessarily have to do that at all. But yeah, I guess this is the end of the video here. Again, pardon my voiceover. And until next time, this was Janai with Karmic Fixer Tarot. And I don't have my glasses on, so I'm looking for the cursor. And until the next time, see you again.